Hi again, everybody, and it's time for the Big Blue Breakdown, the Game Balls and Gassers edition, as the New York Giants knocked off the Seattle Seahawks on the road 29-20 in Week 5 of the NFL regular season. I'm Paul Dottino, and there are so many different game balls you could give out to the Giants in this one because, in truth, they dominated far more than the final score would indicate. But the game ball on offense, well, you probably guessed it already, but there's no way I can avoid it. So let's just get right to it. It's rookie running back Tyrone Tracy, who came out of Purdue last season, had 3 100-yard rushing games, and with Devin Singletary out because of a sore groin, Tracy turned out to be the guy that the Giants would rely on for their running game. Giants threw the ball 34 times. They also ran it 34 times. So it was a very balanced attack. In fact, for the afternoon, the Giants averaged over 5 yards a carry, 34 attempts for 175 yards on the ground. But let's get to Tracy. 18 carries, 129 yards. He ran for 5 first downs and did catch 1 pass for 1 yard. Now, he becomes the 5th New York Giants rookie to rush for at least 129 yards in a game since 1960. Who were the others? Saquon Barkley, 3 times in 2018. Ahmad Bradshaw, once in 2007. Andre Williams, once in 2014. And also Bob Gators, once in 1961. So when you put that historical perspective on it, what Tracy did against the Seahawks today was very, very impressive. He had a slew of runs to the inside and to the outside, show some grit and power, as well as some speed, quickness, and elusiveness. All right, let's start by going through a couple of the key runs before we continue to analyze who else might have gotten a game ball today but fell a bit short. Early in the second quarter, the Giants are down 7-0, first down and 10 from their own 31, and Tracy takes off on a 27-yard scamper to the Seattle 42, and that was the key play in what turned out to be an 81-yard touchdown drive that tied the game at 7 apiece. Now, why was that important? Well, because on the Giants' opening drive, they got down to the 1-yard line, and Eric Gray was ruled to have fumbled before the goal line, and Seattle ran that fumble back for a touchdown. So the Giants were quickly down 7-0. And all the momentum, of course, would have been in Seattle's favor following that takeaway that became a 7-point return. But the Giants answer with this very impressive touchdown drive, and Tracy had the big play in the possession. Now, in the middle of the third quarter, Seattle hits a field goal. Giants are up 17-13. And on the next snap, following a kickoff, when the Giants now have the ball 1st and 10 from their own 27, he dashes 25 yards to the Seattle 48, immediately getting the ball out of harm's way and putting it on the other side of the 50. It changes the entire complexion of the game as he tilted the field, with the Giants owning a 4-point lead. 3 plays later, on 3rd and 1 from the Seattle 39, it's that guy Tracy again. This time, 13 yards as he rumbles to the Seattle 26. The Giants would settle for a field goal on this drive, but they now have a 20-13 lead. And I remind you, he had runs of 25 and 13 yards on the drive. Explosive plays that Tracy certainly has the ability to produce. So, Tyrone Tracy is our offensive game ball for the day. Now, other possible selections that we talked about? Well, I thought about Darius Slayton. 8 catches, 122 yards, and a touchdown. In fact, in the third quarter, it was his 30-yard grab in the left corner of the end zone that gave the Giants a 17-10 lead. He began that possession with a 41-yard catch down the right sideline. Also got called for an unsportsmanlike celebration penalty, which puzzled an awful lot of people. But the bottom line is that Slayton had two big grabs on a touchdown drive that gave the Giants the lead. So he certainly deserves honorable mention. And where would the Giants be without Daniel Jones right now? Because he is playing some terrific football. 23 of 34 for 257 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no interceptions. And as far as Jones is concerned, we talk about the 23 for 34, but I should also remind you there were 4 drops by the Giants during the afternoon, which obviously hurt his completion percentage, and his quarterback rating would have been even higher had the Giants held on to those passes. In fact, as much as I hate to say it, holding on to those passes also would have put the Giants in a lot better position to score more points and make this game the blowout that it should have been. All right, let's go to our defensive game ball. And to be honest, there once again are 4 players who could be candidates here. I'm going to make it really simple and just tell you who the winner is right off the bat. The Giants knocked down 7 passes of Geno Smith's today. He was 28 of 40 for 284 yards and a touchdown. That came on a busted coverage in the back of the end zone. But our defensive game ball goes to cornerback Deonte Banks. 3 passes defensed and a forced fumble. Only gave up 2 short passes on the day against a very dangerous trio of Seahawks wide receivers. In fact, the great DK Metcalf was held to 4 receptions for 55 yards on 7 targets. And it was he who had the ball jarred loose on Banks' forced fumble. So a week after Banks was kind of admonished by his position coach and the Giants coaching staff basically for maybe not playing through some plays as well as he could, and perhaps also not using the proper technique when he should have. He certainly used proper technique today. The effort was there. The technique was there. Chalk this up as another step in the maturing process for one Tay Banks as he continues his march towards being a true number 1 cornerback in the National Football League. Other candidates we talked about. Well, Dexter Lawrence had 3 of the team's 7 sacks. DJ Davidson had a couple of sacks himself as the Giants D put on a masterful show, holding Seattle to 3 of 11 on 3rd down. They also had 10 quarterback hits on the day. Brian Burns came up with a huge play. 14 minutes left in the game. Giants are up 20-13. Seattle has a 4th and 1 at its own 35. Why they decided to go for it, I will have no idea. But they did. And Burns came off the left edge of the Giants defense, raced in, and drilled Geno Smith for a sack to get the Giants the ball back. They had to settle for a field goal, but that put them up 23-13, a 10-point margin in the 4th quarter. And clearly, that turned out to be enough. I also want to mention Adoree Jackson here as an honorable mention. And I know what you're going to tell me, that he slipped, fell, was called for a pass interference at the end of the first half. Well, we'll talk about that later. But he gets an honorable mention here as far as a game ball because with 1:08 left in the game and the Giants up 23-20, Seattle is driving down for what could be a game-tying field goal or, for that matter, a game-winning touchdown. It took them only 32 seconds to go 38 yards. And on 2nd and 4 from the Giants' 28, Tyler Lockett goes racing down the left sideline on a go route. Blanket coverage by Adoree Jackson. I mean, he is on him as close as peanut butter is to jelly and forces an incompletion right down there at the pylon. Could not have played the ball any better. Outstanding job by Adoree Jackson on that play. Now, Geno Smith did overthrow Lockett by a tad, and I'm not sure even if Lockett had caught the ball that he would have come down in bounds. But the point remains, blanket coverage by Adoree Jackson all the way down the field. So those are your honorable mentions, but again, we go to Tay Banks as our defensive game ball. Our special teams game ball. Well, I got to share it, right? I got to share it. You guys know that a special teams play decided the game in the final minute. And if I didn't share it, it wouldn't be right. Minute and 5 left. Giants are up 23-20. Adoree Jackson had just forced that incompletion down the sideline. Next pass was a fingertip drop by the Seahawks. Pretty good coverage by Dre Phillips, but a fingertip drop. So now it is 4th down and 4 from the Giants' 28. And Seattle kicker Jason Myers is going to come in and try to hit a 47-yard field goal that would send the game probably into overtime. Of course, the Giants would have had about a minute to go. Who knows what they would have done with the ball in that final minute. But the Giants wind up executing a sensational play that Coach Michael Gabriel put in on Friday. Isaiah Simmons is usually not on the field goal block team. But what the Giants had decided is that if they had Simmons in the middle of the line, what he could do is, as the Giants defensive linemen, Dexter Lawrence and Nacho Nunez Roches, crash down, Chris Stoll, the center, will be snapping the ball. And the A-gap is the space on the offensive line between the center and the two gentlemen on opposite shoulders of him. Well, the idea was, because of Isaiah Simmons' length and athleticism, that he would hop through the A-gap. Remember, it's a very tricky maneuver to make, because if you contact the center head on, it's a penalty. If you use anybody to boost you and get over, it is a penalty. So it's a very tricky maneuver to execute. Well, Simmons tried it on Friday at practice as a result of the coach's suggestion, and they liked it. So they decided to hold it in Sunday's game against Seattle for the perfect time. Well, with 1:05 to go and Seattle needing 3 points to send the game to overtime, it was the perfect time. So Simmons executes the hurdle on the snap, races directly at the kicker, and the ball practically hits him right in the face mask. Takes a wild bounce, and just as the Giants had anticipated, Bryce Ford-Wheaton, who was also charging in on the field goal block unit, was there to pick up the ball on one bounce, off a hop, and race all the way uncontested to the end zone for a 60-yard blocked field goal return for a touchdown. Nick McLeod was his escort. And as I talked to Isaiah Simmons after the game, and also Bryce Ford-Wheaton, both of them told me that Simmons had told all of his teammates, but specifically McLeod and Ford-Wheaton, while they were on the bench before Seattle was getting ready to kick the field goal, that he knew he was going to get it. And all they had to make sure that they did was pick up the ball when it bounced. Scoop and score, as they like to say in the National Football League. And so for Bryce Ford-Wheaton, what a great story. A torn ACL as a rookie, loses an entire season, comes back this year, makes the team, playing specials, and that was really a key to his value and why the Giants wanted him on the 53. He did play 4 years of special teams while he was in college, or so he told me after the game today. And so it's something he's familiar with and takes a lot of pride in doing. Well, it certainly showed today as he picked up that pigskin and rambled 60 yards for a touchdown. The Giants also being very smart, because if you attempt to kick an extra point and it gets blocked, something goes wrong and the defense then runs the ball back, they could score off of that play. So the Giants simply had Daniel Jones take a knee on the point after so that there could be no possible score by Seattle on a fluke play, and that's why the Giants decided to be conservative there, not go through with the point after attempt, and the score remained 29-20, and there was no possible way that Seattle would be able to do anything about it unless they had gained 2 more possessions. And again, with about a minute to go, that was very unlikely to happen. We're going to pause very quickly and take a timeout and come back with our gassers from the Giants' 29-20 victory over the Seattle Seahawks. All right, now it's time for the gassers. And on offense, we go to second-year running back Eric Gray. 2:33 left in the first quarter. The Giants go 15 plays, 79 yards to set up this play. It's their first drive of the game. It took 10 minutes to complete, and on 4th and goal from the Seattle 1, Eric Gray tries to go up the middle for the score. And in doing so, as he gets to the goal line, he takes the ball and reaches out with both hands, and the ball slips out of his hand. Jerome Baker of Seattle was credited with a forced fumble, but it really just slipped out of Gray's hand. Rayshawn Jenkins picks it up in the end zone and goes all the way in the other direction for a 102-yard fumble return for a touchdown, and Seattle takes a 7-0 lead. Interesting to note that the whistle didn't blow on the play, but none of the officials actually signaled for the Seattle touchdown. They went to video replay review because it was a scoring play, and it turned out that there was no goal line camera available from CBS to give an accurate video presentation of Eric Gray's run/fumble. So all they had was angles from behind the end line of the end zone. Nothing along the actual goal line to indicate if the ball had penetrated the front of the goal line. And so we'll never know if the Giants actually had scored that touchdown or not. But without conclusive evidence, they had to go with the play as it stood on the field. And so the Seahawks had themselves a 7-0 lead. Maybe someday the NFL will standardize how every NFL stadium needs to have not only cameras for each goal line, but also for the end line and for the sidelines. It just doesn't seem to make sense why that is not the case, and that the league allows the officials and basically forces the officials to rely on replays that come from the network television feeds. The defensive game ball, and we are going to go to Adoree Jackson. Second quarter, 14 seconds left. Giants are up 10-7, and Jackson slips and falls and allows Tyler Lockett to make a 28-yard catch to the Giants' 25. He was also called for pass interference on the play, so even had he not slipped, he would have been flagged for the PI, and the ball would have come down to the Giants 25 anyway. Seattle kicks a field goal on the next snap, and despite being dominated in the first half, a first half during which they had only 90 yards of total offense, gained only 5 first downs, and gained only 2 yards rushing, the Seahawks went into halftime with a 10-10 tie. All right. Our special teams gasser for this one. And this is also kind of tough because the Giants' special teams did win the game. And to be frank with you, I couldn't really find anything that was so detrimental, but we do have to give a gasser out. So with 11 and a half minutes left in the fourth quarter, the Giants are up 23-13 after that field goal that we mentioned a little bit earlier in this report. Laviska Shenault takes a kickoff 4 yards deep in the end zone and races 32 yards in the other direction to bring it out to the 28. So how do I give a gasser here? It's a half-hearted gasser, so maybe I'll excuse him from running laps. But kicker Greg Joseph, who has been booming the ball to the back of the end zone since he joined the Giants 2 games ago, that's what he's been doing. On this particular kickoff, for some reason, even though he ran up to the ball and it looked like he gave it a good boot, the ball came down in the middle of the end zone. So I'm going to assume that he mishit the ball, and that's what happened. Instead of putting it through the back line, the ball came down into the middle of the end zone, and Seattle had an opportunity to return it. Again, Shenault returned it 32 yards, and even though it wound up at the 28 instead of the touchback 30, there was a danger there in having the Seahawks return the kick, and I suspect that the Giants wanted Joseph to kick it out of bounds for the automatic touchback. That is simply a guess on my part. Therefore, it is a half-hearted gasser. I just did not find any other gasser to give to the special teams unit that wound up winning the game. Now, the Big Blue Breakdown will return once again coming up on Wednesday. That's at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time this week as the Giants prepare for next weekend's game against the Cincinnati Bengals. We will take your live audio calls, your live video calls, as well as a chat. So we'll be here on the Big Blue Breakdown. I'm Paul Dottino. So long.